Hi, it's Jeff Chalmers here from discoverdouble-bass.com, which is the home of online lessons for the double bass. And I'm joined today by Zoltan from Zoltan's Bass Lounge. Zoltan, thanks so much for joining us and coming to hang with us in Leeds at Left Bank in this beautiful venue today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's great here. Yeah.
Well, we met when I came to study with you. I was an electric player and I kind of transitioned into the upright world. And you were a big reason for that with your, the way that you inspired me to kind of take that journey. And I wondered if we could talk today a little bit about students who are electric players transitioning across over to upright, maybe some of the things they need to kind of bear in mind, and a little bit about the equipment that they use. But first of all, what about you? How did you make that jump from being an electric player? Because I think you started out on bass guitar, didn't you? And then, how long had you been playing? What was the kind of motivation for moving in the direction of double bass?
Okay. I started on electric bass when I was about 14, maybe, and my dad was a semi-pro trumpet player, and he had an electric bass, and I backed him to give me the electric bass, and finally he did. And so basically, for about a year, I just played to pop songs, and try to figure out the notes and then play together with the radio. But then, like I said before, a friend of mine had a double bass, so I went over and I saw this double bass, and the story is that I played this F, and it actually somehow. And I just played that one note, and I thought, this is it. I'm going to be a double bass player. That's it. No more. And at the time, actually, I was I was going to go to college to become an electric engineer.
Really?
Yeah, and I was kind of halfway into this, and my family was very happy with that. And all of a sudden, I run home, and I said, no, I'm going to be a double bass player. And so they kind of took the news all right. And anyway, so basically, I really fell in love with the double bass from the very first note I played on it, but I also loved playing the electric as well. So I thought that I'd keep them both up, we bought a double bass in a local shop, just like a Chinese thing, on which I started. And very quickly, I knew that I had to go to school, that I couldn't just fake things like I could on the electric bass,
you find
on my
that
own.
A lot, don't you?
So it was like I got that thing, and I played a few notes, and I thought, okay, well, I need to go to school. I need to have a teacher. And my dad knew this person, the local symphony orchestra principal, and so I went to him and I studied with him, and it was a great time. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I mean. It's a little bit crazy, but I love the C-mandel etudes, the Hrabe etudes. We had, in Hungary, there was a bassist, a double bassist called Louis Montag, and he had a method book series. So it's the Montag 1-2, 2A, 2B, 3, 3A, 3B method books, and I studied out of that as well. And then actually what happened is that all the studying I've done on this then went on to the electric. So I was basically self-taught until I met Jeff Berlin, and everything I practiced and everything I did was just musical content, that came from studying the double bass.
That's absolutely fantastic. And do you find that you get many students now who've taken the same journey? It seems to be pretty common, I think, that people are being drawn across. And what about some of the challenges that they face? What should they be looking out for? So if we've got a student with us today, what are some of the common problems that they're likely to face?
Well, it is technique, basically. It is technique. It's the notes are the same, the strings are the same, but we have one major issue on a double bass: shifting.
I think that's really important to focus. Hand shape and shifting.
Hand shape and shifting. And I went to Thomas Martin, the amazing classical double bassist. They live 10 miles down the road from us, luckily. And I went to have a couple of lessons with him. And at that point, I think I was 25 years into, 25 maybe up to 30 years into playing professionally. And I played a little bit to him. And then the first thing he said, well, we'll open your left hand up a little bit. And that really shook me. I thought I was quite all right at that point. And he gave me advice that actually really opened up my left hand, And it was just a little thing of, I used to get this kind of thing where I would be a little bit rigidly holding my arm up like this, and just kind of really play the notes kind of somewhat forcefully, you know, if you will. And he said, just try to just bring that arm and your hand up to the fingerboard and just hang it off it, and just have it relaxed, and don't choke your instrument, you know.
Yeah.
And that was just one little thing that really helped, you know, one little pearl of wisdom like that. You know?
I think you're so right. I think really focusing in on shifting, on you know, left hand technique. And I think the problem with upright is you can get so drawn into the left hand that you can lose track about musical content.
Yeah, and the right hand.
Yeah, and the right hand, absolutely, as well.
Yeah.
What about drawing a big sound? You're getting a great sound from this bass, Zoltan. Could you give us any kind of pointers about right hand technique that maybe if you were new to the bass you wouldn't know?
Yeah. I had a very good talk to this bass this morning.
Did you?
Yeah.
You've got a big room to fill here.
Dude, you need to sound good today. No, I'm kidding. It's very simple. I mean, you know, you have this in your videos as well, and it's just two things for comping and for soloing in jazz. When you comp, you want to use this side of your fingers a bit more, so you have a bit more of your fingers and a bit more mass meeting the string. You know, and what you want to do is, to me, is just a combination of two things. One is that you hook your finger onto the string and then just let your arm go. That's all. That's already a sound. That's already a note. I haven't plucked, I haven't squeezed, I haven't done anything yet. And then you can do a little bit of that as well.
So it's just releasing the weight.
Yeah. And then you then combine plucking, not much, just a little bit, and the releasing of your weight.
And it's interesting because that's also one of the things that we were alluding to with the left hand as well, about this use of weight and
absolutely. The last thing you want to do is squeeze your notes, because believe me, I've suffered it. You know, we only have 4 fingers there, the 1, 2, 3, 4, and you don't want to murder them. So you know. And
of course you're playing your 3 semitones with fingers 1, 2.
Yeah, definitely. That's, I'm from the old German school.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Francois Rabat and the whole French school of, I think.
Yeah, there were people who are.
I think it's like 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
That kind of thing, pivoting. Yeah. I tried that, but that's because I was already so ingrained into how I came up and how I was brought up. I didn't think that the time spent on that would be wise, you know, when there are other things to do with what you already have, you know.
Well, I love the way that you play anyway. You have this clarity in your left hand, which is really exciting. Let's talk a little bit about equipment, because people who are new to the bass will be certainly having a few questions. So tell us about the bass. So what's the instrument that you're playing now? And let's start there. I'm about to ask you 10 questions at once.
Okay. This is a Martin concert model 3/4 bass.
Yeah.
And since, you know, I know the Martins quite well. I know Thomas, I know George, Mary, Jane, the mom. They're lovely people, wonderful people. They all ride horses and all of that. But anyways, so this is their 3/4 concert model, which is the table is I forget what kind of wood, but so basically they make this bass themselves, and this is a great bass. It's been with me about 10 years now. I bought it brand new, and it didn't sound like this, you know, when it was. I mean, it has a lot more depth than, you know. It's a nice bass. Yeah.
I love those fourths at the top. It's really beautiful.
Yeah. So I love this bass. It's they set it up. They are very good at setting instruments up. So they set it up for me really well. They put in these Wilson pickups.
Okay.
Which I have met Mr. Wilson himself years and years and years ago in 1989 or 90 in Mittenwald.
Wow.
At an ISB convention. You probably weren't even born then. You know, and he was there, and he was a lovely person. He was talking to people about his pickups because they were quite new back then, you know. And I bought a set back then, and I haven't got that anymore. But this is my second set, and this has been with me probably more than 20 years.
Wow.
You know, it's a great. I mean, you know, you can have your whatever you like to use. I like these. You know, you can always EQ a little bit on your amp if you want a bit bassier sound. These can be a little bit more mid frequency oriented, but you can EQ that a little bit, and they're so great. They don't feed back. You know, they don't cause any harm. You know, whereas I tried other things, and you put your bass down for the break, and you come back for that. You know,
that feeling.
So. That's the bass itself. I mean, I've got another bass as well, which is that one was built by Joseph Hell, Hel, who used to build basses for somebody called Colin Maison in Paris, in France, and at the late 1800s. So it's 1880, 1890.
Sure.
Yeah, and. That's a great bass as well. That's the
one I've heard you play most of the time.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I don't really take it out of the house too much. So I like this, and actually because I play this all the time, so I'm not very comfortable on that. So that's another reason I don't really take it out many places.
How about the strings? What are you using on here?
I have tried a few different things. This is something I got as a gift from Wayne Darling when I last saw him in Prague, actually.
Oh wow!
You know, when we went to that convention, and I think this is a Tomastic spiral course. I think it is. I actually like the sorry, Tomastic. I like the Eva Perazzi's. You know, my favorite strings are the Eva Perazzi Wikes, you know, the orchestral lights.
Well, me too, because you've got the light gauge on the spiral chords here, and I kind of go between this set and the Eva Perazzi Wike, and the two are really well worth considering. And I think for people who are getting into upright bass, especially from a bass guitar background, that setup and a good set of strings is just so key, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, I know people do stuff where you'll have two strings that are different. And like, I think the bel cantos, I don't actually know a lot about strings, because I use what I used, and I kind of like what I like, and that's it for me, you know.
Spend the time in the practice room, not in the...
Rather than, you know, and it's an expensive habit as well, you know. So...
What about amplifier? Do you what kind of amp do you use?
I've been using an acoustic image ever since I've been in the UK. Yeah. Before that, I actually played on amplified a lot.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah. Cool. I was very fortunate in LA. I just about walked into a 4-night-a-week gig at the Santa Monica airport, upstairs in a huge restaurant, and that was owned by David Price, who's a billionaire and all that, and he was flying planes, and John Travolta, because he flies planes as well, he was always there with his entourage, and if I can, I could tell you a funny story about that. So one evening we were playing, and John Travolta comes to the bandstand, just like right there next to the bandstand, and he's dancing with his wife.
Oh, nice.
To us playing. Yeah. And we were used to him being there, so it wasn't big news, it wasn't a shock. But so they're dancing, and the piano player said bass solo, and I said, what? No.
This is going to kill the mood.
Yeah, they're dancing. I'm not going to play a bass solo, and they all stopped.
Oh.
And there they are dancing, so I just kind of played kind of a bass line type, you know, an extended bass line type solo, and then they kind of both looked at me, and they stopped dancing and left. That was horrible.
Well, those bass solos will certainly do it, won't they?
Well, you know, that'll stop them dancing, you know. Yeah. So, anyways, the acoustic image is very good, I think. You know, there are different kinds. The one I use is the TN2, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
The round.
Oh yeah, the 10-2. Yeah. I know what you mean.
With 2 channels.
Oh,
it's quite
cool.
good. It's good for electric as well. It does color the electric a bit, which I'm not, you know, it's not great, but for double bass.
I think for upright, it's absolutely perfect, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And if you've got some, just as we finish up, any kind of like last words to share of encouragement maybe, or words of warning for people who are transitioning across from electric to upright bass?
Yeah, I think the one thing to look out for is that you can be a quite evolved electric bass player. That doesn't mean that you'll be able to play double bass. So go to a teacher, you know, and study the instrument at least until you get to, you know, to the octave. At least until then, you know. you really need to go through the different positions, like you said, the hand shape, left hand, right hand, to relax, you know. And the main difference is that the electric bass is a guitar, it's a bass guitar. This is a violin. So they are a different different family of instruments. So this really does have, you have to approach it with a lot more care. You know, actually, just to say something about that, I mean, I used to get my ideas on electric bass because this was just not accessible that much to me. You know, on electric, you could just, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 and then I would learn how to play them on double bass. You know, that was, in a way, I was self-taught on double bass in that regard, that I did a lot of jazz phrasing and all that kind of stuff that I took from electric onto here, but I had to learn, even though I knew the phrases, I could play them left and right on the electric bass, but it was then another thing to put them on here, you know, because of technical difficulties and technical differences, you know.
Absolutely, and I think it's nice to kind of reflect the good thing about the position of an electric player moving to upright is that it's kind of the same challenge really, is that they have all this information, they know so much already,
Yeah.
they can play so much, but it's just being aware that it's a very different animal, but it will inform their playing in a way that if they didn't have that knowledge, you'd be starting from a different place. And yeah, I definitely encourage people to get out there, and in terms of gigs, it's amazing, you know.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, employability, definitely, yeah. If I just may, just one more thing about that, is the sound actually, is the real big glue between the two instruments. You know, when you start to have a good sound on this, you know, that will help your electric sound. You know, because when you're an electric bass player, you're always playing through the amplifier, and so that might actually take you away from the amp and just play the electric bass, although it doesn't make a big sound, of course, but you can have a sound without an amp. And if you'll have a good sound just on the instrument, then your amp sound will be much more clear, you know. So that, I think that's one thing that you can really actually go back and take back from double bass to electric bass, that you create the sound here. You can feel it, you know, you can feel that the resonating chamber pushing the air out, and as you stand there with it or sit with it, you can feel that, you know, and so to make a great sound, that's one of the most important things. That's what everybody hears, the first note you play, what your sound is like, you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. You think back to that low F that you played.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Yeah.
I don't know whether you should have played that F. It's taken your life in this direction.
I know.
If you think about that, you know, looking back, but I'm glad that you did, Zoltan. And thank you so much for sharing so much with us today. Where can people find you online if they want to learn more from you?
I have an online resource called zoltansbasslounge.com.
Go and hang at Zoltan's Bass Lounge. I can recommend it. What's the URL?
It's zoltansbasslounge.com.
Nice.
That's it.
That works. Great. Go and check out Zoltan's Bass Lounge. And if you have time, check out discoverdouble-bass.com as well. Thank you, Zoltan, for sharing so much. Thank you for watching at home, and we'll see you in a future video.